Welcome to the SimpleSoftware Training University video number 210, Configuring Index Autofill. In this video, we will go over how to set up autofill index fields to automatically fill in information extracted from a data source that is matched to a key value or values. This capability is sometimes referred to as match and merge, and it allows you to fill in large amounts of already existing electronic data with only a minimal index entry or automatic recognition. I have a base configuration set up currently in the desktop, and it's set up to read the barcodes that appear here. So anytime it sees a barcode on the page that matches a list, it's designed to pull in the barcode value. But if you also want to pull in additional information, you can do that as well based on the key barcode value. So when it sees a barcode, it can extract other information, and in this case we're going to do patient name and date of birth that are on these pages here. Now it does require that you have some sort of data source to match against, and it's any ODBC compliant data source. I have an Access database set up, but it could just as easily be an Excel spreadsheet or a SQL database, MySQL, Oracle, or practically anything. So I have this patient info table, and here is the chart number, which is the barcode value, and then I'm going to have it fill in the patient name and the date of birth. So to do that, I need to go into the job options, either with this button, File Job Options, or Control-J, and then go to the Index tab. So in the Index tab, we see we really only have one index field, which is of a barcode type and is the chart number. And this is actually set up to match against that column in the database. So patient info is the table, and chart number is the column within this particular database. But what we want to do is fill in additional fields based on that chart number that it recognizes. So the first step to setting up an automatic fill for the autofill data source is to actually set up the data source itself. So to set up the data source, you first click the Set Autofill Data Source button. And that pulls up the index autofill settings. So you first want to tell it what database to use. So if you have an Excel spreadsheet, you would point it to a DSN, or if you had a SQL Server database, you would give it the SQL Server database string with the table and the database name. Or for an Access database, you point it to the path where the Access database is. You can also select from a drop-down if you already have a database configured in the Database tab. The next step is to pick the table that you want to match against, which has the information. And if you remember, in our database, it's called Patient Info. So that's the table that we're going to pick. Then once we pick that, the database fields from that table are automatically populated. So now we see chart number, date of birth, ID, and patient name, which correspond to these fields here. So what we want to do is pick the key field that will be read or manually keyed in SimpleIndex that will autofill the other fields from the database. So obviously in this case it's the chart number. So in the database the field is called chart_number, and in SimpleIndex the field is called chart number, and that links the SimpleIndex field to the database field. So once we've done that, we can click OK, and we have our key data source for autofill set up. Now what we need to do is pick the fields that we want to assign linked to the chart number. And again, that will be patient name and DOB, date of birth. So the field type for automatically filling information from the autofill data source is the autofill field type. So we'll pick autofill for both these fields. We'll give it a name. Then in the template, we'll put the column name from the database table. So it's patient underscore name for patient name and DOB for the date of birth. Or we can pick it from the drop-down. Because once the autofill data source is set up and you pick autofill as the type, it automatically populates the field names. You also want to check forward for any autofill fields linked to a key field if forward is checked for that field. Same goes for the required checkbox. Folder and file name are independent of that, so you can check whichever ones you'd like. I'll leave these as file name for now. So now once we've done that, and we save the configuration, we see that it has 3 fields here. So when we run the job, it'll pull in the images, read the barcode, and do the autofill. We can see it processing now. So now you see that based on the chart number, BCD234, that it read as a barcode and it matched from this column in the database. You see that it filled in Susan Adamantos and the date of birth 1-1-1951, which is in the same row in the database that we linked up to the autofill. You can see everything that was read here. And anything that it doesn't find in the database, it'll show up blank in the autofill fields. And any barcodes that it doesn't find, say on these pages where there's no barcode, it shows up blank entirely. So now when we save all, and then we view the output folder, we see that the file names have automatically been labeled with all of the fields. And of course, as was showed in other videos, you can mix and match the file names and folder names based on any of the index criteria. Now another thing is that when you run the job and it recognizes the information, you're not limited to what it reads for the chart number to autofill the patient name and date of birth. You can actually pick additional other values if it reads the incorrect barcode or it doesn't read the barcode at all. And when you pick a new value, it automatically changes the index information. We'll just cancel that out. Now the autofill not only works for automatic fields, such as the barcode that I showed you, or zonal OCR that's demonstrated in other videos, but it can also be used with a manual process where you manually select or manually key in a value. So in this example, we'll change the type from barcode to list, and that changes it to a drop-down field instead of a barcode field. And it uses the same list that was linked to the barcode for dictionary matching of the barcode. Now some other capabilities that you can do with the autofill are things like allow manual input in the autofill fields. Now what this does is it allows you to change any of the information that it automatically recognizes from the autofill. That way you're not locked into exactly what the database has if anything was keyed in incorrectly to the database. So in this example, we'll run the job and we'll select the chart number from a drop-down and it'll automatically fill in the appropriate information for the chart number. But if, say, Susan Adamantos or the date of birth was put in incorrectly, you can go back in and change these because we've set it to allow manual changing of the autofill fields. Now you can select from a list on the chart number, but if it's an autofill field, the fields don't show up in the list. So you have to change that automatically. But once you change it, it keeps carrying forward those values until you change the chart number or the fields. Okay. Now in many cases, you'll have a database that has the same record repeated on multiple times. So you might have more than one chart number or more than one record that has the same chart number. So for instance, we have this chart number, but we have a different name. Now we can refresh and save that. So now when I run the job and I pick Susan Adamantos' chart number, we see that also Bob Smith has the same chart number. So it's asking which one of these we'd like to use. So if we want to stick with Susan Adamantos' record, we can just click OK because one's set by default. But if we want to pick one of the other records, in this case just one, we enter the record number that we'd like to enter, and it puts that information in as well. Now if you always just want to pick the first record that it finds in the list, there's an option for that as well. So in the autofill settings, you can pick automatically select first matching record. And then when you do that and run the job, and you pick the Susan Adamantos chart number, it automatically fills in Susan Adamantos because that's the first record in the database that matches that chart number. Whereas Bob Smith or any other ones that have the same chart number fall further in the list and therefore aren't automatically used. Now you can also have two key fields for matching, where it has to match both fields or one or the other to autofill any other additional fields. So in this example, we'll make the patient name and the chart number key fields. So we'll first start by making this a list field and then linking it to the patient info table in the database. Let's just confirm. Yep, patient name is properly spelled. And then in the set autofill data source, we set that as the second key field. So patient name and patient name. And then we'll uncheck select first matching record. Now if we want it to require that it match both key fields, the first and the second, we leave match on a single key field unchecked. But if we want it to fill in if it matches one or the other, then we can pick match on a single key field and it will automatically fill in when either match. So let's try it matching both key fields first. So when I run the job and I select the chart number, it asks which one I'd like to fill in, and I can click OK. But if I fill in Bob Smith, it automatically fills in the date of birth for Bob Smith as well. Or if I pick Susan Adamantos, it fills in her information instead, because we have two key fields selected. Now if we don't want it to warn us We can turn on automatically select first matching record. And then when we pick Susan Adamantos' record, it still fills in automatically, but if you change the name, it fills in the information without asking you. Now if I pick Susan Adamantos here, or Bob Smith, we see that it doesn't change because it's only set to match on a single key field. Or, excuse me, it's only set up to match on both fields. But if we set it up to match on a single key field, then it'll match on either. So when I pick Susan Adamantos or Bob Smith, it switches. Or if I pick the chart number, it automatically switches. That's the end of the SimpleSoftware Training University video number 210, Configuring Index Autofill. We've seen how to use one or two key fields to extract information from an already existing data source by automatically extracting the information or manually entering it and having everything else from the data source automatically filled in.